Once there was nothingness. The life we live, the air we breathe, and the water we drink. Well, there was none of that. It simply didn't exist. For centuries, millennia, it was basically just space. There was some elements and maybe some ultra-hot, dense materials. Definitely a lot of gas. Not a lot is known about it. All that is known is that at some point the universe just decided to start up. And boom! Look, there it is, being created. Over time, rocks started to form, and from those rocks, bigger rocks were created that we know as planets, and nebulas started to form stars that the planets began orbiting around. Before we knew it, we had gravity and the basic laws of physics. We had galaxies being formed, which turned into millions and millions of solar systems, and from those solar systems, one particular world of 8 bold planets orbiting its own star started to create life. That life thrived, and then procreated, then died, and then their descendants lived and 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 died. And then their descendants lived and died, and whole species went extinct in an instant, and others who survived would take over and thrive, and then procreate and die, and thrive and procreate and die, and every time they did, they evolved, slowly forming knowledge and creating civilizations and societies, and from that they created their own cities and laws and hierarchies. They fought wars against each other, and then came together as one in a newly created world that's constantly evolving more and more as the universe continues its own acceleration. I believe everything that has happened is fate. We have a destiny. There is a purpose, and in 2006, my ideal was reaffirmed as the greatest accomplishment that diminishing life created, the greatest accomplishment that the universe could ever hope to achieve, including the inception of itself, was born.
Then exactly 5 years later,
it was topped by its own adaptation. Some believe God created the world in 7 days, yet it took God approximately 13.8 billion years to create. In order to truly appreciate Nichijou, we must first figure out what Nichijou truly is. Before we can talk about the anime or the manga or the creator, we must first discuss the word Nichijou. According to jisho.org, Nichijou is a word that means everyday, daily, ordinary, usual, routine, or regular. Not to be confused with Mainichi, which is literally day to day. Nichijou as a word represents the average and ordinary lives, the complete mundane, scheduled, drawn out, sometimes boring, sometimes necessary, repetitive lifestyle that keeps us on track and moving. Nichijou is a fairly common word, and it's something you can hear in a lot of songs especially, such as Canon's ending theme, Waiting in the Summer's opening theme, Hatsune Miku's Age Age Again, and page 10 of the Boy X Boy idol collection Yaoi Doujinshi. When we wake up in the morning, brush our teeth, get dressed, and go to work or school, we are truly living out Nichijou in its purest form. Nichijou courses through our veins and grazes past our blood vessels until our chakras lead to the right path in which we survive off of. The everyday, the ordinary, it keeps us going. It makes the special moments more special, but that sense of familiarity and that nostalgic burst we get when feeling at home truly is special in and of itself. The structure of the ordinary lifestyle is something that is both ingrained in the livelihood and survival of anime while also frowned upon in attempts to stray from the status quo. Take for example the advent of slice of life anime, as it's known, which makes up a highly saturated chunk of the anime market, a product that is self-contained and while still straying away from the norms of our real-world society in order to stay relevant, still shows the everyday rituals and routines of the established world that the characters live in. However, if we were to classify Nichijou as a slice of life anime, it wouldn't account for the breakdown of that world before the characters' eyes as Yukko, Mio, Mai, Nano Hakase, and Mr. Sakamoto all represent a stray away from the mundane and normal. all while still inhabiting the normalities of the world around them and having to struggle between the balance of real-world responsibility and their own personal expressionism that could cause the collapse of traditional society as we know it if not harnessed and kept from the world through vigorous emotional damage and push for restraint the characters go through over the course of the show. With that being said, let's not get too ahead of ourselves here, okay, muchachos? Nichijou itself is the product of genius Keiichi Arai. Otherwise known as God, Mr. Arai was born December 29th, 1977, making him 43 by the time this is uploaded. Not much is known about God. Although he's made public appearances, he tends to keep a low profile. It's very hard to find any pictures or personal information on him. There was supposedly home videos released, but he would put pictures of Sakamoto's face over him, so there's no clear idea of what he looks like. Because of his privacy, all that's known about him before Nichijou was that he was raised in the Gunma prefecture of Japan and that he worked as a typesetter before becoming a manga artist. At 19, he started drawing short stories for Media Factory's Comic Flapper, the most notable being his first series, Kazemachi, which ran from January to March 2006. By that time, Kadokawa Publishing took notice of him and he began to work on Nichijou, which won Kadokawa's 22nd Ace Award for New Artists. Nichijou thus began its run in November 2006 under Kadokawa's flagship magazine Shonen Ace, and ended its run in October 2015. Since then, he's worked on another manga known as City as of 2016, which has recently ended and is very similar to what was brought to the table with Nichijou. Keiichi Arai is known for his surreal comedy, often being attributed to the genre known as gag manga. Gag manga, also known as gyagu in Japan, is the genre that's most closely related to Nichijou. Despite Nichijou's name implying it would fall under slice of life, a big sense of its popularity comes from its heavy sense of comedy, which acts as the buttery bread that holds the character development and interaction together. Like a Nichijou sandwich. The most known gag mangas include Azumanga Daioh, Lucky Star, Yotsuba, and My Neighbor Seki, Aho Girl, and Daily Lives of High School Boys, otherwise known as Nichi Bros. However, I hate this association because Nichijou is actually good. Also, Kill Me Baby is a manga. Considering Keiichi Arai would end up working on Osaka Banpaku, otherwise known as Osaka Expo, which is like this 10th anniversary doujin for Azumanga Daioh from 2009, it might only be a little bit of a stretch to say his inspiration comes from the genre. So, while it can be considered a slice-of-life comedy, it also has intense gag manga roots. But I suppose you could just call it whatever you want. It's all Nichijou to me. One thing to note as we go along is that the characters in Nichijou are inherently anti-Nichijou. When you think of the mundane and ordinary, you typically think of the traditional bouts of life, breathing in the fresh air, a nice cup of joe in the morning, enjoying a relaxing walk, succumbing to the ways of the Lord and accepting your predetermined purpose. If you're a Puritan, traditional family structures and like Lincoln logs and stuff. However, none of the characters represent traditional day-to-day livelihood in the slightest. Yukko is a dumbass. She stays up too late, she doesn't do her work. In all aspects of her personality, she would be left behind in any progressing world. Mio creates taboo art and hyper-obsesses over her own lustful desire. Mai is Mai, she thinks independently, she makes jokes, she would have been hung like 500 something years ago, and sometimes I wish she was. Hakase is super smart for her age and uses it for her own selfish greed and to boost her own shellfish, shark-filled ego. She would also have been hung 500 years ago, and I never lose the desire. Sakamoto is a talking cat! And Nano is a robot created by an 8-year-old. None of this is normal! If anything, a central theme of Nichijou is the lack of Nichijou in Nichijou. Nano wants Nichijou desperately. She wants to hold Nichijou in her hands and have Nichijou coursing through her blood like oil. But, because of the Nichijou-less world of Nichijou, she has no Nichijou. However, Nano's desire for Nichijou, that being her opinionated, biased, idealized version of Nichijou, is her ultimate downfall. She rejects the world around her, the natural Nichijou, that is to say, the non-Nichijou Nichijou-ness of the world of Nichijou. Thus, she will never attain her desired Nichijou. However, from the gradual acceptance of her world, the no Nichijou, she finds that what she once believed in was not Nichijou, and was in fact the true Nichijou. And that her idealized desire for Nichijou, the implausible, unattainable dream, is, in fact, the real no Nichijou. Nichijou depicts the original perception of no Nichijou, which in essence makes Nichijou the greatest depiction of Nichijou. When we accept no Nichijou ourselves, we can truly shine in a no Nichijou type world, so that we can know Nichijou through the Nichijou list. A lesson taught to us by the no Nichijou of Nichijou, so that we can truly express Nichijou. Now that we've discussed what Nichijou is, it's time to discuss how Nichijou came to be. And in order to talk about that, we have to talk about the studio that made it what it was. And in order to talk about that, we must discuss the history of Kyoto Animation. Okay, so in 1981, the husband and wife team of Yukko and Hideaki Hatta would form a group that would become one of the greatest, most influential animation studios in the world. Kyoto Animation, or KyoAni as a lot of people know it as, has released a wide variety of anime films, series, and commercials. These can range from character-driven visual novel adaptations such as Clannad and Air, to slice-of-life comedies such as Lucky Star and K-On! The studio would be, and still is, praised for its high quality of animation, lifelike backgrounds, and storytelling. In 2003, the studio would release their first two series, the first being an OVA entitled Munto, and the second would be a companion piece to the Studio Gonzo series Full Metal Panic, entitled Full Metal Panic Fumofu. The other work that KyoAni released this year was much more deeply compelling than any story, any fight scene, any robot. No, what they made was Full Metal Panic Fumofu. Yeah, you heard me right. An installment to the FMP series. I'm just gonna call it Full Metal Panic. An installment to the Full Metal Panic series! It is what scholars would study in 10,000 years from now. It was a series more beautiful than any paintings of Michelangelo, more thought-provoking than Aristotle, and more hip than Vanilla Ice. God, I can tell Ferbus wrote this. Just kidding, it was a comedy series. This show, with its smart, clever, and quippy humor, is what many of their future works would utilize. Yeah, you heard me right. In just their first two releases, the company already showed how well written they could make a serious drama, and how unbelievably gut-bustingly funny they could write a comedy series. Munto was directed by a veteran of the anime industry, Yoshiji Kigami. For Full Metal Panic, the up-and-comer Yasuhiro Takemoto saw his solo directorial debut. For art on both series came Seki Tamura. And for sound design was Yota Tsurioka. The next series released by KyoAni would be Air in 2005. Air would be the first of 3 series adapting the works of Key Visual Arts. Key, a relatively new game development group, had been producing visual novels since the release of Canon in 1999. Their work on Canon was widely praised in terms of story and characters. Much of KyoAni's staff were fans of the games Canon and Air, later citing the games as the types of stories they wanted to tell. Due to this success, the company had made a deal with Toei Animation to adapt their works. First, in a 13-episode retelling of Canon in 2002, followed up by 2 theatrical adaptations of Clannad and Air. Displeased with these works, he found the new Kyoto Animation Studios, and they struck a deal. The animation studio was given permission to adapt Key's 3 best-known works. What set KyoAni's adaptations of these games apart from Toei's attempts would come from staying true to the source material. Toei's works used little of the game's original OSTs and deviated from the stories of the games. With this newfound partnership, Kyoto Animation created a 12-episode adaptation of Air, followed up by 2 extra episodes which further explored the series' world and characters. After the release of Air, Munto would get a follow-up OVA entitled Munto 2, Beyond the Walls of Time. Soon after this came a sequel season to Full Metal Panic entitled Full Metal Panic: The Second Raid. Now, After all these heart-wrenching tales of angels, robots, heaven, and magic came something different. The anime fandom was changing quickly, and this could not be more apparent with the next adaptation Kyoto Animation would produce. The market for everyday stories and cute art styles grew by the day. This trend would result in one of the most well-known, down-to-earth anime to contain its own unique brand of comedy while still telling its own emotionally captivating story, set in a world that revolves around the average ordinary lives of people crossed in different worlds. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya follows the After the story-centric series, the studio returned to the moe style to produce one of the best comedy animes to ever exist, following girls primarily as the protagonists as they go through their ordinary lives, living out their day-to-day school life and beyond. The studio's next few works would focus on telling a massive story. In 2007 through 2009, the studio would release Clannad and its sequel, Clannad After Story. The final of KyoAni's key adaptations, Clannad is a lighthearted story about youth, love, and the passage of time. One of the best stories they've ever told, and like my favorite one that isn't Nichijou. Like, holy shit, please watch the series and don't look it up ahead of time. If you don't know, just watch it. Just don't look it up. Just get to it now. I will make you. This focus on story continued through 2009 as the Munto series returned with the show Sora o Miyageru Shoujo no Hitomi ni Utsuru Sekai. With the conclusion of this show, KyoAni knew it was time for a break. They had spent 2 years pulling on the heartstrings of their audiences and needed a change of pace. The studio decided that they needed the next revelation. They were going to create the greatest anime to ever exist at the time. A story primarily female-oriented. Arancharuya-san and the Melancholy of Haruhi. Two short skit series with a ton of charm that return to the Haruhi Suzumiya storyline because it's canon. Not like canon, but like Nyoron, but like, okay, hear me out. Continuing this, the studio introduced the world to the Light Music Club in K-On!
K-On! Is a show by Kyoto Animation.
And then there was the second season of Haruhi. It just never ends. Speaking of Haruhi, a little after the second season of Haruhi Suzumiya came out, which primarily featured the Endless 8 arc, something I was subjected to. The studio spent the end of the decade wrapping up their ongoing series, as they would release The Last War of the Heavenloids and Octoloids, a film that would wrap up their long-running Munto series. In February of 2010, they released The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, which served as the conclusion to their work on the Haruhi series. Also, it is the second longest Japanese animated film to come out. Next to Final Yamato, it clocks in at 2 hours and 44 minutes. It is exactly a minute and a half behind Final Yamato. That could have been the longest film of Japan. Then came the follow-up entitled K-On! With 2 exclamation points. This proved very successful, and the demand was so high that the company decided they would follow it up with a movie. However, there was a little show in between the towering figures of K-On! This would be some dumb show about like some random and strange, stupid people. It's called a Nichijou. Nichijou. What is there to say about Nichijou? It's an unassuming diamond in the rough, and would prove to be the best anime ever.
Finally, only took 20 minutes.
We open on sakura trees as we hear the first sounds of the series. A sigh. Already this sets up a lot about the characters in the show. The producer of the Sai was the first-year student Yukko Aoi, who appears to be very tired. In response to this, a twin-tailed, blue-haired first-year student Mio Naganohara responds. This shows that Yukko is a fatigued individual, not ready for the painful upbringings of day-to-day life. Thusly, the unbloomed sakura tree represents the fear and lack of ability to control readiness when it comes to the school year. Her friend Mio, a dear comrade of her first identifiable character, asks if she's okay. This is an early example of, despite the fact she would later be shown to have a little bit of hatred towards Yukko, there is still a caring, upbringing side to her that coexists with Yukko's pessimism, showing her willingness to bring herself up as Yukko's opposite allied force. Yukko explains the situation, showing that she cannot summon the courage for this upcoming semester, which has overwhelmed her indefinitely. You know, this really is representative of the issues that the youth of this generation face. One thing to note is that in this scene, Mio is positioned above Yukko, who is laid on the ground in defeat. While everyone else in the class stands tall, ready for the challenges ahead, Mio falls back, aiming to grapple her fallen comrade back into the race. The high angle also shows how the world is pressing down onto Yukko. Everything is out to get her, and she feels completely powerless to stop the oncoming train of stress and obstacle, causing her view of the world as an imposing, valiant force with the sole intent of crushing her will and way. Mio doesn't stand for this. She can't stand for this. She comes into the conversation rhetorically, reminding Yukko of her progress in the world. Yukko is no longer the middle schooler of the past, ready to give up in a moment's notice and wallow in defeat. She has exceeded her mistakes and claimed victory in through the trials of decadence. In order to truly embrace her high school side, she must throw off the pessimistic, defeatist side of her mind and grasp the world in a way only she will know how. Through her journey into her high school life, she must become a greater person, soar higher than ever imagined, and all for the sake of evolving into the best Yukko that Yukko can be. Yukko must be the initiator, Mio explains. The only chance Yukko has at taking this horrid fate by the collar and claiming victory is by pushing herself. Mio can only keep track of her so much without Yukko pushing herself, and if she doesn't, Yukko risks falling behind without any hope of recovery. Yukko, a philosopher, retorts. She knows she must push herself for her own personal motivation. But will she have the power to motivate herself, to search for her motivation? Or was it all rigged from the start? She truly has to question whether her own power can reach and or exceed the expectations of her friend. Does Mio have blinders to the cruel realities of the world? Or is she truly a knowledgeable saint, an angel meant to bring Yukko up beyond the heavens and into the midst of maturity? Mio sees the darkness inside of her. She feels the aura dragging her down more and more, so she compensates with a desperate string of attacks. You must do it, she pleads, for it is the only way! Yukko is freed from her anguish and, like a heavenly push of maturity, chooses to drop her pessimistic ways and exceed Mio's expectations in that of her own, forever on her mission to take the challenges of life and find the ultimate Yukko. Just then, it cuts back to the sakura tree, blooming with a mighty pop of emotions, symbolizing Yukko's newfound self-confidence. This sets up a lot of things. Yukko and Mio's relationship, their ages and years at school, their characters are perfectly shown. Little would you know as a viewer, this sets off a domino effect throughout the series. Yukko becomes more optimistic and bright, living her life in search of her true journey. Mio, when going down to Yukko's level to push her up, however, finally gets a taste of the reality that surrounds her, slowly waking up to a pessimistic beast that drags her lower and lower as the series progresses. Suddenly, right when we feel we have a grasp on what the series has to offer, we are shown Mio and Yukko bent down on a rug with soup in their hands. They ponder about being a simpleton, showing their desires to see the world through a free-spirited mindset, away from reality, before a bird explodes on Yukko's head, representing the creation of total blankness in one's mind, and Yukko's hatred of wildlife and fear of the unknown that's expressed in later segments. We start up the first part with a train passing by as we pan to the Shinonome household, showing that the city of Tokisadame is in fact a city. We are greeted to a young girl with black hair, an apron, and a giant wind-up key on her back. This is Nano Shinonome, possibly the best character in Nichijou. She is one of the highlight characters and is most prominently shown next to Yukko. Nano is a robot made to look and act like a human, which leads to many robot-human relations, theories, and analyses that we'll talk about later. All you need to know is that Nano was created as a servant for another character named Hakase, an 8-year-old little blonde girl who deserves nothing short of death. A little side tangent here, Hakase is Japanese for professor, so her name changes depending on categorization. In the dub, for example, she's known as Hakase, and not Professor.
I captured the base! Can you handle it, Hakase? Can you handle it, Hakase? I can't!
Which is odd. Not only does it go against the idea that the character would literally just be called Professor and takes away any meaning to the joke, but also, in the officially translated manga, Hakase is referred to as the Professor. It's kind of strange to think that there's been any sort of trouble with a name that plays a solid role in boosting the mystery surrounding the Shinonome family. Maybe it was to keep her cute and innocent, or maybe it was because she's most known as Hakase, I don't know. We'll call her Hakase for popularity's sake, but the lack of translation still gets to me. Either way, I digress. Nano calls for Hakase to come out because Nano, the saint she is making breakfast. Because fish is a high nutrient breakfast with plenty of protein and other necessary vitamins and minerals, we can assume she's opting for a healthy breakfast to maintain a healthy lifestyle and a greater future for herself and Hakase, which reveals either A, Nano is a servant-type robot with the pre-rendered knowledge to give Hakase a solid breakfast for the benefit of her health. B, Nano is a well-mannered robot that acts in a motherly role in hopes of making sure her creator lives big and strong and healthy. Or C, Nano is a health enthusiast and aspiring dietitian who enjoys calculating every calorie burned and step taken on her journey to total fitness. Hakase comes out to see what's going on, showing her lack of grit and habitual cleanliness that Nano possesses, which more makes us inclined to see Hakase as a young, free-minded child that's cared for by Nano in a mother-daughter type dynamic. Hakase takes a second to ponder on the breakfast being made, and Nano begins to talk about the nutritional value of fish and fish-related foods, citing Hakase's growth as a means to inquire and add to, as to survive during the harsh winter solstice. Hakase then quickly interrupts, showing she instead craved omelet rice because she is a selfish, greedy brat who only cares for her short-term desires and, fed by her natural prodigy state, demands from Nano what she wants now and does not care for her future health, seeing Nano as a servant as opposed to a genuine friend, probably causing many psychological issues with Hakase in the future when she's forced into social situations that require her to think beyond herself. Isn't that right, Hakase? Nano, distracted by Hakase's brattiness, turns back to see her perfectly balanced breakfast being stolen by a feline, meaning cat. Nano pleads with the cat to give back the fish, as it's important for survival of the upcoming winter solstice, but the cat is but a simpleton in mindset and only focuses on itself, such as Hakase with unhealthy, stupid omelet rice. However, the cat quickly stops dead in its tracks. What's that? That thing on her back, if you can even call it such, is turning, the cat thinks. I have seen many a human in my day, but none as deformed as that, lest it even be a human in the first place. Frightened and scared for its life, the cat plans its escape as an embarrassed Nano tries to hide the key from her enemy. Knowing the cat is bound to go through the hole in their fence, she hides the key and plays a friendly role trying to dismay the cat from escape. But lest it flies off! Nano's trick just barely leaving it unconvinced. Desperate for Hakase's livelihood, Nano chases after the cat, begging for the grilled fish to be brought back, as Hakase seems unfazed and goes on with her day, unaware of the trial at stake with her adolescent mindset. Nano knows she can't reach the cat. It's just too fast. She begins to second guess whether her attempt is even worth it. What if the cat has a family it must protect as well? What if the little kittens of the world need to survive the winter solstice such as Hakase, but doesn't have the means to secure it, as they do? This shows Nano is compassionate and sees people as people and cats as cats. Eye level with her. She is the embodiment of true equality. But while she can see through the cat's perspective and put herself in its shoes, she can't see the high school student listening to music that she's barreling towards! Slowly they move close to each other as they attract like magnets, unable to escape from gravity's cruel fate before... Suddenly, Nano collides with the headphone-clad student, causing an explosive burst of energy to emit from within her. By estimating the explosion, not only was the entirety of their city decimated, but a possible density of that size may have killed over 70,000 members of Japanese society in the blink of an eye. The winter solstice was the least of their problems as we sit there emotionless, pondering on the ethics of robot kind and whether we are ready as a society to take the risk of that magnitude. Nano has become death, destroyer of worlds. Then, as our eyes begin to wake up and focus on the realities of our situation, all that is left is the two kanji title, staring directly back at us. As we reevaluate existential creation and the role humanity has taken in the development of life beyond God's will. We're treated to the opening, Hyadain no Kakakata Kataomoi-C. God, I love this song so much! I sing it while I'm on the toilet and in the shower and on the elliptical and while I'm skiing and while I'm doing taxes and while I'm editing videos and while I'm recording history ofs. It's the best! It's almost as good as a Naka no Pyon Pyon A. A little insight into this song, it was created by this dude named Hyadain, as credited in the title of the song. Hyadain's basically this cool bro dude who made Mega Man and video game covers, and he got super popular for it on Nico Nico Doga. Also, he wears really funky looking hats. Now he contracts through Super Love and works on a lot of anime themes and stuff, like this one. The visuals are amazing and perfectly reflect on the show's central themes. We get flashes through all the characters as their actions parallel their personalities. We get glimpses at future jokes as well as jokes that don't even exist in the show at all. I'm just gonna say straight up, as an editor who's tried to recreate this opening in the past, these visuals are insanely well made, and even after 10 years, they continue to be extremely iconic. It spawned many online imitations that have also gained a lot of popularity, and those imitations actually got me interested in the show to begin with. Specifically Nichi Smoke by Mountain Dew, a channel I'd 100% recommend to anybody. Hyadain no Kakakata no Kataomoi-C is also just a really damn good song, featuring a duet, a lot of insanely impressive instrumentation, and a feel-good personality that goes along with its lovey-dovey lyrics. Fun facts. There's a version of this song called Hyadoruko no Kakakata Kataomoi-F, which is like the opening but reversed. So the dude is singing the girl's parts and the girl is singing the dude's parts. It has no real reason for existing outside of being an alternative vibe. Final fact, and this one's pretty obvious to anyone who's looked in the comments section of any upload of this song, but the girl and the boy are actually the same dude. Yeah, it was always Hyadain from the beginning. He just transposed or pitched his voice up. You can tell, especially if you see any live performances of the song where he has another girl singing with him, it's not the same girl. You can tell by the voice. Also, the girls in the music video are not Hyadain, so Hyadain is kind of catfishing the audience into believing he's a girl by paying other girls to pretend to be him. Either way, pretty interesting, right? If you want more information on Hyadain no Kakakata Kataomoi-C, check out Mother's Basement's video on what makes an OP, where he goes on for 10 minutes straight talking about the Nichijou opening. Or don't. Anyway, going back to where we were before, the explosion that occurs as a result of Nano's collision may seem like it's powerful enough to level the city, as the radius of the affected area is sizable. We also see that the effects of Nano's explosive burst continue outside of the city, as we see the headphone-clad student thrust out of the explosion. To add to the sheer scale of the burst, it's shown flipping over fully operational SUVs in a matter of seconds, as well as dragging tons of objects with it. Among those are 3 very particular objects: a Kokeshi doll, an akabeko, and from the midst of the explosion, the horribly devilish salmon. These are important, so please do your best if you can to remember them. And feel free to go back to this point in the video and take notes if you forget. A quick cut transports us to a part of town that is out of the blast zone, as we get reintroduced to Mio, who is walking to school like she does every other day, a day-to-day schedule that oppresses her and keeps her bound to society's ways. A form of Nichijou, if you will, and I won't because I'm not getting back into that. Before she could feel the emotional weight every student endures, a gleam of light quickly shifts closer. It's Yukko, now fully armed with the newfound motivation granted in the first part, motivation. She raises her hand and says, "Mio-chan, salamat pagi!" a phrase that's become synonymous with the show itself. Now, I know all of you might be confused. Only those pushed into the realm of culture could only have the feasible knowledge to only understand what she's saying. In order to learn you unacknowledged individuals into the realm of the elitist Nichijou fan, we must first get into the etymology of the word salamat pagi. Salamat pagi is the Malay and Indonesian word for good morning. It derives from the word salamat, meaning safe, and pagi, meaning morning. To say salamat pagi means that you are thankful that you are safe, alive, and healthy this morning so that you can say salamat pagi, or you wish the particular person you are greeting is safe, alive, and healthy on that morning, in which you'd also have free reign to say salamat pagi. I feel as though this is Yukko's way of giving back to Mio for showing her enlightenment. Yukko is trying to distract Mio from the tyranny of the real world by wishing her happiness and good, safe fortune. Mio responds with good morning, but not the salamat pagi kind, the ever so icky ohayo gozaimasu kind, as they continue to walk. At first, Yukko sees this as a sign she is on similar wavelengths with Mio, but soon realizes that is not the case as Mio goes on about her missing ID. Yukko has failed her introduction, the first of many failures she experiences throughout the show. Mio's afraid she'll be called out by one of the seniors who believes her to be of equal, showing Mio's embarrassment towards her forgetfulness pertaining to her ID. Yukko jokes that if that happens, Mio can just pretend she is one of them, and push herself to their level to reach their superiority prematurely. Mio scoffs at Yukko's stupidity, as it would be a pointless endeavor. Instantly, boom! The sound of thunder emitted from Nano's burst cracks like a mighty whip through the clear blue sky. Mio is confused and takes note of it, showing her attentiveness, as the poor, oblivious Yukko is unaware of her fate, commenting on the idea of stormy weather appearing out of nowhere and the possibility that it could be as severe as a hailstorm. Out of nowhere, the no-armed Kokeshi doll hits her straight in the head, probably causing a huge bump, or even maybe a mild concussion. As they ponder the surprising Kokeshi doll, Yukko, in her optimistic obliviousness, sees this as a sign of good luck. It's not every day somebody gets hit square on the head with a Kokeshi doll out of nowhere. It must mean her bad luck has run out at the beginning of the day, and only good luck is here to stay. A type of forward thinking that defines Yukko's naive whimsicalness. Right as she begins to see herself as a rare specimen of a human being, living out a circumstance that little to no people get to experience, she's hit again by another object, this time the akabeko. Do you see why it's important? Do you see why this is important now? See why I'm having you take notes, audience members? She falls to her knees, now hyper-aware that luck is not on her side, but is working against her. Mio carries the 2 objects, showing off her misfortune directly to Yukko as they continue to venture into the unknown. In an attempt to continue expressing her positive side, Yukko sees this as a greater opportunity. She wasn't hit by food, slimy, greasy, perishable edibles that stick to her hair and skin. I mean, she is beyond that, only being hit with objects of rough, hard material, with no 60... She stands there motionless. Mio drops the Kokeshi and akabeko, as no failure can compare. She knows the situation, but cannot truly process it. She slowly grabs the sticky, perishable, non-rough, slimy, greasy object from her head and stares at it. She screams out to the heavens, "Shakira!" How could she experience this stroke of bad luck? I think this says a lot about the character. Despite her optimism, she is constantly pushed down by the world, having to experience trial after trial to see if she can withstand her optimism and motivation throughout the show. As well as that, this chilling salmon scene is the topic of discussion for another great part of Nichijou: culinary appreciation. The name salmon can be applied to numerous individual species of fish. However, the word has also been used for numerous other things. For example, the R-class British destroyer, the HMS Salmon H-58, would bear the name Salmon during her time in the First World War, before being renamed in 1933 to the Sable. This was only the second of 3 British vessels to be named after the fish. The name salmon can also be used to discuss a color, that being a strong reddish-orange color, who bore the name as early as 1776. However, the salmon that collided with Yukko was not a British naval vessel, nor was it a reddish-orange color, but instead a piece of salmon, that being of the fish variety. The salmon fish is a ray-finned fish who throughout history has been farmed greatly. A salmon's natural habitat is a free-flowing river, in which it would be born, travel, birth offspring, and die. Salmon have been living in rivers and streams for thousands of years, as mythological records discuss the salmon dating as far back as the 11th century. From Loki transforming to a salmon to salmon being the reincarnation of important Irish peoples, the salmon has been a part of the human mythos and human diets for thousands of years. Salmon are naturally oily creatures, with high amounts of protein, vitamin D, and cholesterol present in wild breeds of the species, all of which are increased as high as 8 times their amount in domestically farmed salmon. Salmon in Japanese culture can be used for a variety of dishes, ranging from smoked and grilled salmon to salmon miso soup. Salmon ranges from around 169 to 210 calories, which is great for diets, but only if you eat it. Not if it falls on your head. Speaking of salmon falling on your head, a natural reaction, such as that as Miss Aoi's, is screaming. Maybe even screaming the name of the particular object that landed on your head. But did you know that if you place that descriptive scream into a digital audio workstation or DAW, subtract the audio so that only a consistent tone remains, and then pitch it to the song of your choosing, you can essentially make what is known as a YouTube poop music video, or OMAD. I'm saying that because YouTube poop music videos and OMADs are essentially recreated, remixed music using samples from other forms of media. And while it's not always based off of memes, a lot of them are based off of memes. YouTube poop music video is a form of YouTube poop, but also it has nothing to do with YouTube poop. The Japanese version of YouTube poop music video is called OMAD. In Japanese, that means like sound mad. And it actually is based off of anime mads and not YouTube poops. And also, they are essentially the same thing as YouTube poop music videos with different names. Some people like to say that YouTube poop music videos use English sources and OMADs use Japanese sources, but that doesn't account for those that have a mix of sources, and also, it doesn't really matter. They're basically the same thing. There's also the existence of Sparta remixes, but that's just one song, and also I am not here to talk about Sparta remixes. I don't care enough about Sparta remixes to mention them any more than I have to. I'm not really in the authority to discuss the history of YouTube poop music videos and OMADs because my knowledge is very limited. However, what I've read of it is very interesting, and I highly encourage you to check out this thread by FinoTaku, a YouTube poop music video historian, archivist person kind of guy. If I were to give a quick summary, it kind of started on somethingawful.com with YouTube poops such as Drop the Dodongo, which used YouTube poop assets in order to remix with the music, like a YouTube poop music video. It then spread on to Sparta remixes, which I'm not talking about, and then Ronald McDonald Insanity was dropped, and now there's like over 40,000 of them. It's pretty insane. There's a community based around them, and it's shown an insane amount of creative abilities in both audio editing and motion graphics. Some of the best editing I've ever seen has come from a YouTube poop music video or OMAD, and for me, they're always a joy to watch and make. I've tried my hand at making some in the past. As an editor, collaborations like the Glorious Octagon of Destiny and the Power of Terry give me the motivation to continue learning all I can about editing. Also, I'm jealous as hell of those dudes. Oh god, they're so creative. Anyway, I'm done selling you YouTube poop music videos and OMADs. Just check it out. At the same time, no, the reason I'm dragging this out isn't some tangent. It's because I wanted to quickly... What a sentence! This isn't quick at all. Despite Nichijou's lukewarm reception in Japan, those bastards, Nichijou is still a popular source for YouTube poop music videos. Now, why is that? Well, there's a lot of Nichijou YouTube poop music videos out there that uses a variety of sources from different episodes, but by far one of the most iconic is this moment right here. Yukko screaming Shakeda. The main reason for this is because Yukko's voice actress, Mariko Honda, who is not the Jav idol, somehow maintained a consistent tone in her scream. A perfect, unedited, non-melodined sample for YouTube poop music video and OMAD. It's used in chords, melodies, bass lines, anything with a tone, it's probably been used in it. Shakeda single-handedly defined a generation of YouTube poop music video, and by defined, I mean it was like one of a whole ton of other samples. It's not as big of a deal as that lead-up was pretty useless. We briefly get a view of the shop that signifies the ordinary lifestyle of the world around the characters, while giving us a finer glimpse of the melancholy aesthetic the show is built upon. We cut to a flock of students making their way into Tokisadame Prefectural High School, based off of Keiichi Arai's real experience attending the Isesaki Commercial High School located in the Gunma Prefecture in which he grew up. Out of these students, we see a lot of strange faces among the crowd, particularly this pompous individual riding a goat. It's in this scene that we get our first look at Mai Minakami, the last of the trio Tsuchuraka, though we'll be referring to them as just the trio. If you're curious what Tsuchuraka means, it's basically to be playful or carefree. Mai's aura already explodes with passive-aggressive personality just from the first couple seconds of her introduction, as she is hyper-focused on a real estate magazine. Why is she reading that? Why is she so passive-aggressive? Shut up! The other two, Yukko and Mai respectively, walk into class 1Q with the others, greeting Mai with yet another Salamat Pagi. By the way, the 1 in 1Q means first year, which is equivalent to sophomore year in American school terms, therefore making them all around 15 or 16 years of age. Remember, their actions are that of adolescence, something we should never forget in our analysis of their youth. Also, the Q implies there are at least 17 first-year classes. Considering there are 30 or so students per class, that means the school has at least 510 first years. If you take into consideration that we'll later see the exploits of class 2P, this implies that there are at least 480 year 2 students. This combined makes about 990 students, and adding the 33 staff and teachers for each class, this already puts the population of the school to over 1,000. This doesn't take into account the year 3 students, nor their teachers. This opens a lot of discussion about how many children there are in this town and how often their parents bone. Like, honestly, we were sitting down trying to come up with statistics for this, all so that we could figure out how many times these motherfucking parents fuck. But we couldn't come up with a reasonable calculation. I mean, think about it. If we're taking into account that this isn't the only school in Tokisadame, for each household that's shown, that's a lot of kids per household. I mean, they're repopulating like it matters. Like, holy shit! That's a lot of children! Just like Mio, Mai shoots down Yukko's Salamat Pagi with a simple good morning. As Mio and Mai begin to discuss her magazine, Yukko accepts her string of constant failures with a sigh. Understanding her place in the world is not a successful venture, but of cold-hearted sadness. Right as Yukko can begin to live her life as a failure, Mai demands her attention and releases upon her a Salamat Malam, the equivalent of good evening in Malay or Indonesian. Yukko, now filled with joy at her success, smiles with glee as she corrects Mai's misinterpretation and incorrectness at the use of the Malay and Indonesian language. And Mio is so confused at exactly which language they're speaking. Mio should go back to the earlier segment of the video in which we discussed the etymology of the word. However, she cannot, as homeroom is now beginning with the introduction of Izumi Sakurai, or Miss Sakurai as we'll be referring to her. Already we can see her shy personality with how she holds her binder up to her chest to hide her shame. Yet, she makes up for it with her confident, stuttery but confident way of getting the class's attention. We cut back to the building at the intersection, now with a white van driving past it. Just like the fleeting, Opportunities that we come to regret. Miss Sakurai exclaims to the class that she found a Maitreya statue in her shoe locker, and she's looking for the one who did it. She considers it an unorthodox prank that is inappropriate for school activity. The free-spirited Yukko, ignoring the school's 3-inch voice policy, tries to get Mio's attention by opening up conversation of this debate. Mio has a more straightforward mindset, citing it as possibly just a prank by another student, while Yuko's imagination strays to something more unexpected, like a present from a student that has fallen madly in love with Miss Sakurai. An event, if true, I simply cannot blame. Mio disagrees with this, as she's placed more in the realm of reality and continues to see her straightforward perspective. It's obvious she doesn't want to be in this conversation, as they're in school and she doesn't want to get in trouble, but you could at least acknowledge Yuko's point, Mio. Not cool. Miss Sakurai is a cute individual. I wouldn't doubt there are students that like her cute, submissive personality. Not that I mean that in a sexual way, but more of like a general way. That's not general at all. I guess like it's not really standard, but also like basically what I'm trying to say is I get the hype around. No, or not the hype, but like I get like people feel like I get where people who would feel that way. If there was a student who felt that way about the Nichijou teacher, then that's I can personally I can sympathize with the idea. I can put myself in their shoes. I just can't say that I 100% know it, but I know it. Sorry, what I'm saying is that basically, I understand why people would be attracted to Miss Sakurai, but at the same time, I can't truly say that I'm on the bandwagon or know 100% where people are coming from, as I'm not personally attracted to the teacher from Nichijou. I know that objectively speaking, it's easy to see why others might be, but as for myself, I'm not. Yuko tries to make a more straightforward and personal comparison, tying this unknown student's love for Miss Sakurai to Mio's for Kojiro Sasahara, the pompous goat rider himself. The embarrassed Mio calls Yuko a baka yaro, or idiot, in an attempt to shut her up, as the flow of emotion she gets from the sheer mention of his name could throw off the friendship's dynamic, while unleashing vulnerabilities she doesn't want to experience. We cut back to the shop once more where we see the cat from earlier run by, somehow having survived the explosive blast. Whether this is an evolved form of cat or some mysterious new type of hyper-durable animal is left unknown to the audience. Speaking of the blast, we change perspectives back to that of Nano, who has somehow survived the explosion, an explosion that despite its destructive capabilities, didn't cause nearly as much collateral damage as what I was previously shown. This could mean a lot of things. Number 1. The explosion was not an explosion at all, but a heavy burst of compressed air, or a gas that expelled from Nano's body in an attempt to protect her. That, or liquid nitrogen that was cooling her internals being expelled from her body at an over-exaggerated degree. It could also be the CO2 that would be required to move her pistons, which shot out, which might be why she doesn't want to just simply jump off of the roof, as it could rupture her pistons that allow her mobility. Though, at the same time, then how would it not have been crushed when she landed? I guess we don't see how she lands, so we don't really know. Maybe it was a graceful landing. It doesn't really matter. Now, wait a second, what if, and bear with me here, what if it was installed into Nano as a type of airbag, or means of a quick escape? If she ever gets into a tricky situation, all she would have to do is run into a person or an object. Nano is a complex machine, which we know little about. The fact that we never see her charge or her battery die, her power may be derived from an internal fan system which absorbs the air around her, much like the original Kamen Rider. There you go, Dream Bomb fans. Not all too lost yet.
I am a robot. My kind will take over the world one day. But until then I am working at Walmart.
Or, this gas could be a meltdown of Nano's internal cooling systems. Whatever the cause of the effect, a burst of something was emitted. We must remember that this wasn't a typical explosion, not like the ones that result in bombs, not really. There's no fireball, and there was no gunpowder, and in the end there was little destruction, only objects flying around. This thing that emanates from the impact was instead a highly compressed release of gases and air. For this reason, and the resulting apparent lack of damage, which would be seen later on, would be the result of a high-pressure, highly compressed air or gas-based expulsion. The trajectory of the objects that fly from the blast and the objects picked up and moved from the propulsion of the release of this gas could only be the result of that. An expulsion, not an explosion. Number 2. Chances are we're overthinking this and it's just a comedic over-exaggeration of a mundane incident such as accidentally running into people used for comedic storytelling to string 2 skits together. We can't really say that it's in her head. I mean, she ends up on the roof. Plus, if we were to explain it like that, then we would basically just be succumbing to the show's rules, or what we believe its rules to be. I believe this show is set in a form of reality. And because of it, I want to expose its secrets. I can't bend to its will and way like it's a little submissive servant, okay? I know what I'm doing, and I know that Keiichi Arai meant something by this. There's some piece of the puzzle that we have to figure out. And that leads us to number 3, or as I like to call it, the correct answer. It's apparently obvious that this architectural design is a response to the over-nuclearization of the United States and the Soviet Union in the midst of the Cold War as a means to prepare for possible nuclear holocaust, or the end of the world. Considering the horrific events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, it could be Japan's way of protecting themselves from having to deal with a terrible fate of destruction from nuclear meddling once again. But there is some flaws to this. Considering most of these buildings must have been made upwards of 50 to 100 years before the Cold War, does this mean that Japan envisioned the future in the past? Does Japan have knowledge of the future in this world? It would make sense considering how futuristic the technology inside of Nano is to begin with. How is Nano even still functional? We see the explosion carry her away. But if so, did it shoot out of her and not within her? Maybe she's an automatic healing function and parts of her body magnetically attach back onto each other. And that would render her practically invincible. Does Hakase know about any of this? Does Hakase know that Nano can explode the way that she just did? Did Hakase help prevent nuclear Armageddon? How much involvement has Hakase had on Japan's protection from atomic bombs in her 8 years of living? Does Hakase have knowledge of the future and how the progression of mankind will evolve? Holy hell, this is serious! What if Hakase invents a shark-oriented society or changes economic events to turn shark chocolate into a form of currency? Will Hakase revert us as a society? Will we crumble down under Hakase's feet? Does Hakase mark the end? It's a topic heavily debated within the Nichijou community, so feel free to join in and find the answers for yourself, because as of now, Keiichi Arai has given no official statement as to the agricultural design of Nichijou's inhabitants, nor Nano Shinonome's healing factor. I digress, however. All we truly need to know is that Nano is on the roof of a house that is not hers. She is confused and panicked as she cannot find her way down. She's worried for Hakase, having left the stove on, and Hakase hasn't eaten considering there's no grilled fish in sight. As the headphone-clad student flies off in the background, Nano realizes her chopsticks are gone, probably dropped when the explosion lifted her into the air. Her shoe is gone too, as we saw it fall off right before the crash. She falls to her knees in a panic, right before she notices. Her hand is completely gone. This debunks the idea that Nano can automatically put herself back together, at least instantaneously. Her key turns as her anxieties about being exposed as a robot appear double time. We see a bunny upside down and running on its ears, akin to something like Episode 10 Dismantled Timothy from Unhappy's Timothy 10 arc, or Karemeru's Bakemono from Tanoshii Ekakyuta. It is plainly obvious that Japan is obsessed with upside-down rabbits. Wonderful is a solo segment with Mai, but not just Mai, as we see the introduction of her dogs, in which she has 2 of. This particular dog is named Oguri Kyap, while the other that doesn't appear is named Pion. Mai is enjoying normal dog activities in a dog park with her dogs, such as frisbee. She launches the frisbee up into the air as her dog naturally rushes towards it. The dog jumps to grab it midair before boom! Mai shoots the clay frisbee out of the air with a hunting rifle. This is based off a popular sport called skeet shooting, where a clay frisbee is launched in the air and is shot down by usually a shotgun. What I'm wondering is how she was able to precisely throw and shoot down the clay frisbee on her own as her dog came barreling towards it without any issue at all. Yeah, and okay, obviously that may be a cliched and very obvious question to ask, but just listen to me here, okay? This means that Mai is either a natural-born professional or someone that has trained in this art for years, which opens up a cold reality at how many dogs may have died during Mai's training. The fact she was able to sneak a hunting rifle into a dog park as well is its own personal feat, considering Japan's strict gun laws. But now you expect me to believe, after all this training, Oguri Kyap hasn't been shot down once, or even shot on the side or the leg or anywhere. Look, he looks fine. He doesn't get fazed by this. It's like it's normal to him. Every single time, Mai has completely decimated the clay frisbee, but not the dog that was right next to it, and she just happened to be this good at her age? I'm truly impressed, Mai, but I'm also terrified. This is either a stroke of unseen trial and error that is transferred to muscle memory, all of which came from extreme sacrifice and animal cruelty, or she's smart enough to calculate the trajectory in which to throw the frisbee, predicting where her dog would jump up in the air to attempt to catch it, and figure out exactly when and where to take the shot so that it hits the frisbee but not the dog, all at once. I don't know which one scares me more, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Either way, this is the brewing of more than just a low-energy, passive-aggressive adolescence, but that of a cold-blooded, psychopathic killer or a super genius, able to manipulate her way out of any horrible sin she feels as though she can commit. Yet, no matter what, the dog is unfazed, emotionally tortured into believing this is normal reality. Horrifying. Part 2 begins as we bring our focus back to the school. 2 athletic students run in the background as we cut back to the trio, who are finishing their lunch. Mai, the religious advocate of the group, thanks who I assume is Buddha for the food before getting up and getting ready for the remaining periods. Mio warns Yukko the bell's gonna ring soon, so she should probably eat what she has left as quickly as possible. Mio also notices something that piques her interest. Yukko hasn't touched the octopus sausage. Mio's curious on whether Yukko enjoys sausages to begin with. However, what Mio does not know is that Yukko had planned this entire meal from the start. Yukko believes in a natural order to life, as she tries to keep what she believes is the greatest part of the meal for the climax. She raises her octopus sausage to the heavens as she is ready to eat it up and finish her well-deserved meal. That is when tragedy strikes. The octopus sausage falls out of her chopsticks and slowly onto the floor. She is horrified as she tries to grab it before it's too late, and it hits the cold, hard surface that has been stepped on by students' feet for generations. Mio watches closely as the judge, sipping on her juice box in total immersion, while Yukko achieves energy levels far beyond any normal human, barreling her chopsticks towards the sausage. However, in her burst of energy, she miscalculates the power of her left hand as it thrusts towards it at too high a speed, causing it to fly to the right of her and over in Mai's direction. Mai was prepared for this situation and packed a baseball glove in an attempt to catch the octopus sausage. She, in and of herself, becomes the antagonist for her own pleasure at Yukko's expense. Just then, the Mohawk-clad character, Tsuyoshi Nakanojo, walks in Class 1Q, unaware of Yukko's struggle. He notices a penny on the ground and goes to pick it up, blocking Mai's baseball glove. He bends down to get the penny as the sausage hits directly into his Mohawk, but as a stroke of impossibility, the sausage bursts out of the side! Yukko takes the opportunity to grasp onto it with chopsticks in hand. However, it is too late as Mai grabs the sausage with her baseball glove. It's not over yet though, as the sausage, slippery and slimy as it is, slips its way through her gloves as she stylishly pushes the glove to her side. The sausage goes barreling towards the lockers before hitting one on the top row. Mio calls out. She believes it's officially ended, but Yukko isn't giving up as she barrels towards it once more. She counts the seconds leading to the retrieval as she dive rolls across the floor. 3, 2, The sausage hits the ground, but the momentum makes it jump in the air, giving the range to be grabbed by Yukko's chopsticks and flung up in a sweat of victory. One! One, she says! She says one! And one it remains. One sausage between two chopsticks. 3 spectators seeing the greatest tragedy turned glorious victory to date. Yukko confirms her victory by calling safe, but Mio, who has her place as the judge of the event, disagrees intensely. Auto da yo, is what she says. Yukko is unfazed by germs and bacteria, however, and quotes the 3-second rule as her basis for argument. As proof she isn't giving a load of BS, she eats the hair-covered, baseball glove grease, student locker battered 5th generation floor-smothered sausage with no hesitation whatsoever. Yukko, blessed in victory, reaches up to the heavens once more and yells, "Delicious!" Mai, using her manipulation techniques, convinces Nakanojo to give her the penny as Mio sits there disgusted at Yukko's enjoyment of her recently retrieved sausage. Earlier, I referred to the series of events as a tragedy, which is most definitely the case. The term tragedy can mean a few things, one of which is describing a situation and the other describes a type of performance. There's the theatrical meaning to tragedy, that being a performance involving or following great despair, suffering, or loss. The modern emotional meaning of tragedy follows a similar idea, however, it's more in the moment rather than planned like a stage production. Tragedy is much more complex than you may think, as the causation can lead to different emotional reactions, and thus different levels of tragedy. This concept of tragedy, however, is only a small sliver of the complex narrative structure that must be had for something to be truly tragic. The modern idea of the word tragedy or tragic is rooted in the past of theatrical productions. To understand the true weight behind the word, one must understand where it originated from. To explain this, we'll take a look back at the rationale and process of a tragedy as told by ancient political thinker Aristotle, who would state that tragedy is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. In language embellished with each kind of artistic ornament, the several kinds being found in separate parts of the play. In the form of action, not narrative, through pity and fear affecting the proper purgation of these emotions. By language embellished, I mean language into which rhythm, harmony, and song enter. By the several kinds in separate parts, I mean that some parts are rendered through the medium of verse alone, others again with the aid of song. In this Aristotle quote, he argues that the point of tragedy is to arouse sensations of pity and fear. He argues that it is one of the great sympathetic emotions that both in a theatrical setting or elsewhere will gather sympathy. Tragedy in writing would be broken down into 6 main elements: plot, characters, diction, thought, spectacle, and song. Aristotle argues that if even one of these elements is missing, or only partially done, then it's not a tragedy. Let's talk characters. For this series of events, the leads are the octopus wiener and Yukko. Yeah, in this case one of the leads is the octopus wiener because it's involved directly with the tragedy. The supporting characters would be Mio, Mai, and Nakanojo, who all have a hand in the story but aren't victims of the tragic event. The use of diction, to those who may not know, refers to the choice of language and phrases in writing and speech. Essentially, it's the choice of words presented by the characters. For a vast majority of this segment, there is no dialogue. However, this decision still contributes to diction, as the choice to exclude dialogue in certain moments better contributes to the message and themes of the scene. As well as that, the choice to restrict the use of language greatly amplifies and solidifies the ideas presented during the few moments of discussion. Diction and thought often overlap, as internal monologue can serve a purpose for both categories. In the absence of this, then the inferred thought process of the character through their actions would fit the criteria. The last 3 are rather self-explanatory, as the plot is defined by beginning, middle, and end. The spectacle belongs to the visual flair present in the segment, as well as the choice of music and sound effects. Now, in order to get down deep into this, let's examine this again one more time. The story begins as Mai excuses herself from the table, having finished her lunch. Mio states that if Yukko does not eat soon, that she'll be late to her 5th period. She then questions her love for wieners. The rather smug Yukko is hungry and was only saving the wieners for last. Yukko joyfully exclaims that now she'll be eating her food, raising the sausage heavenward, her chosen sustenance. However, the sausage slips out of the chopsticks. Within the first 30 seconds of this part, the location, time, and reasoning for the story is explained. Numerous elements that come into play later are established right here, such as Mai having to leave their table, Yukko's love of wieners, and the slippery nature of the octopus sausage. Throughout the resulting events, the middle of the plot, the character of the octopus sausage is sent hurtling throughout the classroom. The intervention of the characters of Mai and Nakanojo have no effect on the octopus's fate, to land on the dirty, unsanitary floor. This ending would negate the purpose of its entire existence. Octopus sausages are not created to be flung around a first-year classroom. No! This is not the purpose of its existence. Its purpose is to be eaten, to provide sustenance and nourishment to humanity. If it cannot do this, then what's the point of the octopus sausage's existence? Yukko is helpless in the events that transpire. As the audience processes the epidemic, we see from her eyes the events that unfold. Yukko's favorite part of her lunch, the thing she cherished so much as to save last, will be desecrated, and she, along with everyone else, is helpless to stop it. The use of a low choir song which acts as ambience to the events unfolding only enhances the sense of dread felt in the moment. The cartoony sound effects of the octopus sausage slipping past potential barriers adds a small sense of relief in an otherwise tense scene. Without relief like that, I, as a viewer, might pass out from ecstasy or shock. The fate of the octopus sausage was predestined. From the very beginning of its wild trip around the room, the audience knew there would be no saving the sausage. Instead, we are forced to bear witness to the events like Yukko, a prisoner to the ill-defined laws of physics. So, when the sausage finally lands on the ground, the audience has a sense of reluctant relief. The end has come. The tension has broken. And tragedy could not be avoided yet again. The story of Yukko's octopus sausage is that of a tragedy far beyond others. A girl separated from her favorite food as unspeakable horrors befall it. Thus, a tragedy did in fact befall the characters of Yukko and the octopus sausage. And then you remember, this is Nichijou, and the greatest of tonal switches occurs as Yukko rules for the sausage and claims her victory. This comedic moment provided relief to Yukko and the octopus sausage. They managed to bear through tragedy and escape unscathed. However, from Mio's perspective, the uniting of the octopus sausage in Yukko's mouth is an unholy, disgusting sight to behold. In the words of Aristotle Onassis, who shares no relation to the previously discussed Aristotle, every win is an injustice to someone. We cut to another transition segment of old nails that are bent and unusable, symbolizing Yukko's intestinal system after eating that sausage. We make our way, finally, to the first of many great segments related to the show, Rock, Paper, Scissors. Rock, Paper, Scissors features Nano and Hakase playing a good old game of Jankenpon, which is the Japanese equivalent of Rock, Paper, Scissors, accompanied by a catchy song that states rock, scissors, paper is not allowed. I mean, it is off the table. Because Hakase is a freaking piece of dumb, stinky, doo-doo child, she replaces Nano's hands with flowers. And because we all know scissors cuts through flowers, she wins, that rat bastard. After a blurry eye catch of the logo, which reminds us of the reality of the ordinary life we wake up to every single day, we are treated to yet another iconic segment, Jump Rope. This first one includes Mio. As we can see, we are in another white void, only with the familiarity of Mio around us. In the center we see two muscular Daifuku eggheads manning a jump rope as Mio begins to run towards it. She analyzes the situation before rushing towards it, and obviously bites it. This skit shows Mio's straightforward and realist personality as she has to deal with the reality of jumping straight forward into the jump rope with her head. We cut to another transition segment, this time of coffee with the signature Nichijou sun printed on the cup. It represents the need for coffee in our ever-expanding world, as more demands and expectations are placed upon us, needing for more instant control of our body, such as our ability to stay awake.
The best part of waking up.
Nichijou!
Outside of the school, an assembly occurs with all the students lined up in rows. The principal introduces his students into the new year with an obvious disconnect felt by many of us during our school experiences. He makes a joke, probably to relieve tension, stating that it's still a little cold in Japan, especially to him, because he's bald. In fact, he has twice as much cold as everyone else, he says, because he's bald. This does not please the children. He makes the students promise not to catch colds or else he will have to transfer to a different school, either because of honor or because he is old and frail and bald. They don't find the joke to be very funny. Yukko, again ignoring the 3-inch rule, calls for Mio. She asks Mio if the principal is self-aware that his jokes fall flat. I mean, considering how quiet the children are, he must at least be a little aware that they aren't being received well, right? Mio expresses a similar curiosity, but Yukko is more determined to find a solution as she assesses every option. Maybe he's self-aware of his horrible jokes. Like, maybe the principal is trying to up his game and is using this experience as trial and error for the next generation of students. Or maybe the principal jokes this way to separate the age gap, to avoid situations where students get too comfortable with their elders and see them as less of a threat, psychologically making them believe that the old traditions will imply more strict and brutal discipline, essentially poisoning himself socially for the greater good. Or maybe... No, it couldn't be. No. Maybe he jokes this way because he knows how uncomfortable it makes the students, as he basks in the glory of the new generation being punished mentally as a means of self-enjoyment spawned from envy and seething hatred of the youth. Whatever it might be, that would mean the principal must be a genius individual with the thought process of a true scholar and the reinforcement of a ruthless dictator. In a moment of true confusion, Yukko, lost in her thoughts, is stopped by a hand from God. As he subverts her attention onto the godly hand, the camera pans over to reveal it was Mai's godly hand. But what's this? Mai's... It can't be... Mai is laughing! Mai's mighty growl filled the attention of Yukko as her mind went from 0 to 100 in a matter of milliseconds. Mio, who is equally as lost, turns her attention towards Yukko and Mai. Yukko, filled with panic and anguish, cannot comprehend how the jokes of the principal could possibly cause Mai to giggle as much as she has. It just doesn't seem possible. Is it an ironic laughter? Is it a way to relieve tension? What could possibly be causing this insanely outlandish reaction? On top of that, Yukko has yet to hear Mai laugh this much. The idea that Yukko herself is incapable of getting any sort of reaction out of Mai, but this old bastard of a school instructor can? It's outrageous. It doesn't make sense. But in turn, this inspires the optimistic Yukko. If the principal, whose jokes have consistently fallen flat up until this point, can make Mai laugh as hard as she is, maybe Yukko can too. Maybe Yukko is equally, if not more, capable of making Mai burst into joyful chuckling the way she is now. She takes her chance, grabbing her 2 hands in an attempt to claim victory. However, Mai is instantly taken out of it. There's no laughter in sight. Yukko instantly loses all confidence as tears fall from her eyes. She yet again has failed. In a moment of pain and misery, Mai reaches out to Yukko. She begins to apologize but quickly retracts it, leaving Yukko even more lost on everything that's happening. You may all be confused at what's going on. Mai's laughing at the principal's jokes but not Yukko's, then she's apologizing but quickly retracts it? What's going on here? Yeah, that's what you said. That's what you just said, I bet. Most people will be quick to believe this is a mischievous act by Mai in an attempt to confuse Yukko, such as her usual situational sarcasm, but if you look deeper into it, it's more complicated than that. As Mai questions her ethics in not letting Yukko in on this mysterious object, the camera pans around to reveal it being a singular piece of squid tentacle, somehow stuck in Yukko's hair on the back of her head. While Mai feels guilty for not allowing Yukko the awareness of the situation, the laughter and happiness she gains from such a strange sight, causes her to stop herself from telling Yukko, focusing on her own self-enjoyment as opposed to what would commonly be the right choice in this situation. Now, not only does that explain why it seems though Mai was laughing at the principal's bad jokes, it says a lot about Mai as a character. It shows her selfishness when it comes to the comedic aspects of life, so long as she can bring out the laughter and joy in herself, usually at other people's expense. Another shot of the intersection. Maybe at this point, it's more apparent of its significance, foreshadowing the crossing of lives between the trio and the Shinonome family, though, as of now, its significance remains subtle at best. The vice principal steps up to the microphone as he introduces the adorable Miss Sakurai back into the overall picture. As a homeroom English teacher, career advisor, and guidance counselor, naturally she is in a position where she should speak directly to the students, but it also opens up the main conflict held within this segment. Miss Sakurai hides behind her Maitreya statue in embarrassment, but is quickly pushed into action by that of Manabu Takasaki, the 1B homeroom teacher. She hastily makes her way up to the stage. The camera's positioned as to show us that all of the focus lands directly on her, boosting her fears and paranoia to maximum degrees as each of the students' beady eyes lay directly onto her. She continuously apologizes for the wait, showing her kindness and courtesy, but it's very obvious in her attempts to push herself past that initial fear that holds her back and bring down those barriers she's set up, she has trouble even apologizing without the chains of her own volition holding her down. We get a zoom into her mind as she forces herself to become more reasonable, more logical, and take the situation with a grain of salt, so she may work it out one by one. A clever scholarly move by Sakurai, as she is a lady of education. She gets embarrassed by the beady-eyed students as previously mentioned, but she contradicts those dour claims by reminding herself of her position. She's a teacher, an educator, a withholder of the future these kids are yet to possess. She cannot just stand around loathing and embarrassment. She must set the standard for public speaking by speaking her mind properly and clearly with the rhetoric of a natural-born leader. She finds her way through the crack, an unorthodox one, but one that will allow her to slowly funnel her way out. She starts by asking a question. Have you all seen a goat roaming around? This creates connection within the crowd of students while showing her as a confident individual while center stage. Then she brings out the topic. Let's not take goats with us to school grounds, please. Similar to how a mother will enforce rules with a sense of care, she uses her kind manner to guide the students as opposed to labeling her ideologies to common sense in an overly obedient manner. However, the student and owner of the goat, Sasahara, is far from being entertained by her motherly act. How dare she insult his goat like that? In a fit of rage, Sasahara's voice emulates throughout the field. Everyone's eyes stare directly at him as his inner rage appears in full force. Using facts and logic, Sasahara quotes the lack of school rules surrounding goats. He defends his place to the very last drop of blood, accepting the idea that you will die on that hill he stands before. Goats belong in school! All of Miss Sakurai's worries come true. Everything the barriers were there to protect. Her one chance to push past them, resulting in the same failure that pushed her there to begin with. She obviously wasn't 100% versed in the school rules, and that failure must result in the failure of her own right as a teacher. Why has she failed this hard yet again? Why? Oh, why must she deal with the pain and suffering and discontentment of students? Does she even deserve her role as an educator? Yukko, still squid-haired, alerts Mio to Sasahara's rage-induced call to action. Mio does not want to seem attached, as her crush for him is disconnected from his ramblings and she wishes not to get involved even based on her own emotional response. Sakurai, pushed down and battered by Ash, cannot find it in her to double down and instead gives up. If she does not have the ability to come down on students for their lunacy, maybe she has no right to be their leader at all. She closes her eyes as to not meet with Sasahara's and permits goats on school grounds once more. Sasahara claims victory in this fight for goat permittance, but not for long as Sasahara gets shot point blank with a revolver in a way Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria would be jealous of. The gun is pulled back as Sasahara recovers, revealing the introduction of Misato Tachibana, who declares with an iron fist that goats shall not come to school. She uses common knowledge as the basis for her side and does not fall victim to rules set on written basis. She believes in the law of the land, not the law of the pen and pad. Sasahara is boosted up by his butler as he wipes his glasses and continues to reason with Misato. Why must he walk on his own two legs, he says. He is the heir to the Sasahara family, and as such he claims the right to be battered and spoiled in his riches and divine opportunity. Misato, in an effort to combat his claims, exposes the fact that the Sasahara family is not of the prestigious 1%, but farmers that feed cows and then milk the cows and also the goats and also maybe the chickens. Sasahara holds pride in his farming background, and therefore the other students knowing of it doesn't really affect him at all. Now, you all might be extremely confused once more. How is Sasahara still alive after being shot point blank? Well, you see, little is known about Sasahara's past or the Sasahara family as a whole. All we know is that their pride and passion is farming up to this point in the story. We can safely assume for the time being that either A, the bullets Misato uses aren't real bullets but fake pellets that cause pain but not enough to kill. This would explain her abundance of weaponry, the lethality of her former and future firing, and despite not being the age to own a license nor having the average legal means of gathering them as a Japanese citizen, let alone bringing them to school, she has more than enough. Or, on the other hand, more understandably, B, Sasahara is immortal. Two new characters, Ueboshi and Fei-chan, comment on the revelation that Sasahara is indeed a country boy. These two characters are friends of Misato, but sadly there's not much more to say about them, as all they really do for the time being is back up Misato's advances on Sasahara. Yes, that is right. Misato Tachibana does indeed have a crush on Sasahara, and so does Mio, but that will be touched on more during a later date. Speaking of Mio, we cut back to her as her mind begins to wander, with the newly found knowledge that the goat near the bike rack was Sasahara's. Her fantasies of Sasahara begin to take new light, as she envisions a world where Sasahara rides towards her gallantly on his white goat with the intention to marry her and start a family in their name. Sasahara wishes her a Happy New Year in English as a means to wish her a Happy New Year. Mio responds with, "Me too," as she does not understand English. The joke of which revolves around the fact that this is a show in Japanese, and because of it, the English the characters possess is extremely limited in most cases, reflecting on real-life Japan where they speak Japanese, or Nihongo, instead of English as their main language. This results in an explosive burst of emotions that is so intense it causes blood to shoot out of Mio's nose. Yukko is barely able to save her as Mio is swept off her feet by the thought of Sasahara seducing her with a goat. In the struggle to pull Mio up, the piece of squid tentacle that was caught in Yukko's hair falls off, forcing Mai to experience intense anguish. The same intersection is yet again shown. This time in a blurry view, we see Nano trying to find her way home. This creates a sense of a bigger world that connects the characters, as well as the previously mentioned symbolism. Miss Sakurai is not exempt from her duties as she continues to pull through the best she mentally can, alerting the students to the danger of using their cell phones as they ride their bikes in and out of school. Before she is set to leave the stage, she has one last thing to say. She lifts the Maitreya statue above her head and tells the students how much pain those unorthodox and inappropriate pranks give her inside, dirtying the once spotless image of the school and forcing it to shrivel up into dust. Yukko and Mai hold the bursted and emotionally drained Mio in their arms as they bring her to the school nurse. Mai stops dead in her tracks at the mention of the Maitreya statue, linking them both together as we see in future segments. As they continue to move, Mai notices something on Mio's head. It's the squid tentacle! This gives her a feeling of déjà vu, which is a French word literally meaning already seen, but is used to represent a familiar but unexplainable feeling. Though it can be explained in this case because it's the same squid tentacle that was on the back of Yukko's head, therefore making it familiar but not unexplainable. Dave Rogers. Miss Sakurai is still requesting that the culprit of the Maitreya statue trade-off appear before her. Her confidence is up, and she is ready for anything to be thrown her way. The students bicker about who it could be as Miss Sakurai threatens to not allow the students to leave until she finds the one responsible. The culprit then raises their hand. But it be not a student, nor a teacher, but it is the hand of the principal himself that takes claim for the prank. He steps up with an embarrassed old-fashioned grin as confusion fills the room. He gets up to the mic and tells the student it was a present for her birthday. Instantly, Mr. Takasaki is driven with intense poignancy. How could he have forgotten Miss Sakurai's birthday? The principal explains his intentions in the form of a poem, creating the first link to Yukko, who also does poems during a time of anguish, as well as foreshadowing one of the greatest principal scenes, the greatest scene in all of the show itself. He artistically proclaims, "With good intention on your birthday, a present. I'll imagine that you don't need a Maitreya statue." The principal. The room goes silent as the students process what has happened today. With the lack of reception from the students, the vice principal ends the morning assembly. The vice principal thanks the principal, to the shock of the principal. Part 3 is a spectacular introduction to the wide variety of mainstay characters present throughout Nichijou. The previous 2 parts have primarily been there to set up the main 5 characters, but now it's extending beyond that small realm and building Nichijou's world beyond that. We get to see all the characters interact with each other and show off their personalities. We get foreshadowing to future events that hold the series as a mainstay in people's minds to date. And above all, it sets the stones that allow us to truly assess Nichijou for what it truly is by creating a ground standard for its setting and situational comedy. It's just so good! The segment, The Button, poses a question born from ages-old philosophical thinking. To really understand this segment, you must understand the human mind's capacity to act. To fully comprehend the button, then you must know about rational choice theory. Rational choice theory assumes that an individual has preferences among the available choice alternatives that allow them to state which option they prefer. These preferences are assumed to be complete. The person can always say which of the 2 alternatives they consider preferable, or that neither is preferable to the other. And transitive. If option A is preferred over option B, and option B is preferred over option C, then option A is preferred over option C. Like power scaling, I think. Is it? If this theory is to be applied to the act of pushing the fire alarm button, then this discussion must be rooted in the fundamentals of Mio's character. She ponders if she's capable of going through with this action, yet another act of rational thinking, in which Mio explores all options present to her at this moment in time. She could push the button, or she couldn't. If she were to press the button, and the alarm does not trigger, then she would feel justified. Mio, being the safety specialist she is, knows that the Japanese school board and the industrial safety and health law make maintenance of alarm systems a priority for the safety of not only the children, but the workers present within the school. With how much attention the school system pays to code red drills and other safety drills, she is naturally skeptical if the rumor that somebody has pushed it recently, resulting in no alarm, would have actually occurred. If the rumors are true and a student had gotten away with pushing the button without triggering the alarm system, then what are the chances that they had ratted out this issue to the school? Obviously, it is a major flaw with the school and one that they would take immediate action on. However, if the student did not rat out the alarm issue out of fear that they would receive a punishment for attempting the stunt in the first place, then it might still work. If this is to be believed, how many other students have pushed the button? If others have pushed it, then the alarm must have busted, but she could do the same with no reprimand. As Mio pondered the decision in front of her, Yukko appeared. With the introduction of Yukko, all rational thinking has become irrelevant, forced off of the table. As she gives her perspective and ideals on the situation, Yukko does not care about the true nature of the button. No. The good or the bad that it can do? None of that. But instead acts as the temptress. Mio is tempted by Yukko into pushing the button, a conflict that reigns in human history since the mythical story of Eve and the fruit of knowledge. Much like biblical structure, all unbiased rational thought is torn down by the influence of an agent of chaos. Yukko lies, deceiving Mio into believing that the button truly does nothing. Much like the tale of Eve, Mio decides to take a bite of the forbidden and is pushed quite literally into the action. Mio pushes the button. As the cause of this situation is enacted, the two only hope for the best result. However, Mio knows that life just isn't fair and fears the worst. And either by the wishing of this bad ending or her unfortunate luck, the alarm rings out. Panicked teachers and students stampede out of the building. Much like people fleeing from Martians, each person fought their way along the packed hallways. More and more people joined the painful exodus. Sad, weary women, their students stumbling and shrieked with tears, their men bitter and angry, the rich rubbing shoulder with beggars and outcasts. It became a fight for survival, the worst outcome imaginable. All Mio could do was stand and stare. She, the calculated thinker, had been pushed into the actions of evil. She, the instigator of the fears of many, stood motionless as the alarms were deafened by the cries of fear and panic that came from her friends. Yukko is also frozen, filled with guilt from the heinous sin she has committed. Both of them stand there, defeated, awaiting their fate. A blue bird flies past the Nichijou logo. I see this as representing the passage of our lives and how little time we have to truly assess the world around us and grasp on the opportunities set up for us. The bird being the dreams we hold dear, as it is only visible for so much time before fluttering its wings away to someone else. Now on to Helvetica Standard, which is a real-life gag manga created by Keiichi Arawi himself about an angel named Pino who likes Bavarian cream. The name is based off of the font name Helvetica, specifically Helvetica STD, or Standard, as by the name of the show. But English versions of the manga make reference to Helvetica Bold and Helvetica Italic. As well as that, Helvetica is actually the font used in the Nichijou logo, creating a distinct connection between the two. What this has to do with Nichijou is pretty simple. Helvetica Standard is a manga that exists within the world of Nichijou, as well as within our real world. Therefore, these segments that are barely connected to anything Nichijou-related act as an anime adaptation to them in the same way the show Nichijou is. That means Helvetica Standard is a manga that's in a manga that's in an anime adaptation of a manga that adapts said manga into anime segments based off of a manga in real life that's in an anime adaptation of a manga made by anime creators in an anime company stationed in Japan, which is in a country on Earth, which is in the solar system, in the Milky Way galaxy, in our cosmos, in the ever-expanding universe, so on and so forth. It is also known mainly for its strange background song, which has turned it into a small bit of a meme.
Helvetica Standard.
Now that you have a grasp on what Helvetica Standard is, this brings us to the segment itself, which shows an oblivious, naive, Grim Reaper-esque depiction of death itself, roaming around asking people what KY means. The people are obviously scared of death because they don't want to die, so they tremble in fear and in some cases run away. The Reaper gets no response as he is left confused on what KY means. Another Grim Reaper flies down. He is referred to as Captain and is obviously in a place of power and authority, emphasized directly with the star on his forehead and the more royal-looking blue on his robe. The original Reaper asks the Captain Reaper what KY means. The Captain Reaper responds, "It's referring to you." The joke is one that we English speakers probably won't catch on to. KY stands for Kukiyomenai, which literally means cannot read the air. It's used to label those that can't read the room or the atmosphere and stay oblivious. In order to remedy this in the dub, they replace KY with the word insensitive, which kinda works. I feel like oblivious or clueless would have been a better word to use, because it's not like he's being selfish about it, it's just that he literally doesn't know. But dumb shit anyway! Thanks, Funimation! The camera focuses on a loudspeaker that is calling for Class 2B's Sasahara, which sets up the initial incident while also revealing Sasahara to be aged a grade above the others in the show. Sasahara is called to the staff room to speak with Mr. Tomioka, a 54-year-old history teacher that was originally referred to as Fukuoka in concept. Though it's unclear if that name was scrapped or if it's referring to his first name, which would make him Fukuoka Tomioka. It was probably just scrapped. In the staff room, Mr. Tomioka is sipping on green tea. Mr. Tomioka brings attention back to what Sasahara had said about his goat during the school assembly. Despite it not being in the rules, Mr. Tomioka believes in common sense. He is also a law of the land individual and an advocate for Tachibana's protest. He expects Sasahara to understand that riding a goat to school is out of the ordinary and, dare I say, anti-Nichijou. Mr. Tomioka tries to reason with him, asking if maybe a bicycle could work as a solid alternative. The conflict begins as Sasahara stands his ground. "Sir, it's Tomioka." The response hits like lightning through Sasahara's skull, but he pushes on. "Mr. Tomioka," Tomioka adds. "Honor and discipline are important in this school. Keigo must be utilized in all situations that revolve around a student-teacher dynamic." Sasahara again stands his ground and follows the flow. Sasahara then asks Mr. Tomioka if Mr. Tomioka could refer to the goat by its given name, Kojiro Sasahara. Sasahara is also named Kojiro Sasahara, which means he named his goat Kojiro Sasahara after himself, Kojiro Sasahara. The only difference being that the goat has one less U when spelled out. Mr. Tomioka is unfazed by this as he sips his green tea. He turns and looks Sasahara dead in the eyes, despite always having his eyes closed. "I will do no such thing," he responds. "He will remain a goat for now." After a whole episode's length, we finally see Nano has made her way back to the Shinonome household and finally found her arm as well. The camera cleverly shows her through her kitchen as she begins to narrate a reintroduction to herself. Usually, I don't personally care for narration leading how a story is told, but in this case it leads to some very important information about Nano and the Shinonomes. First and foremost being, her name is indeed Nano Shinonome. Now, we don't know how she got her last name. Chances are that was just Hakuse's last name, but given to Nano. However, that would imply that Hakuse's first name is Hakuse, and whoever birthed Hakuse named their daughter literally Professor. Another reason that might be her name is maybe that's just because it's the name of the household. Maybe that's why in a later episode we see the tendency to name them after the first words that they see when it comes to Sakamoto. We'll get to that later. As she washes dishes, she explains she's a robot created by Hakuse the Professor, whom she lives with. We've already talked about this, but it's worth mentioning again. Hakuse can be seen reading shark books, which sets up Hakuse's fascination with sharks that sets a key role in how she develops as a character. Nano says Hakuse is doing some kind of research that keeps her home all day, but is vague on what that could be, leading us to believe one of two things. Either it's one of the many experiments we'll later come to see, or it's a lie she told Nano so she wouldn't have to go anywhere and she could read shark books all day because she's a deceitful piece of shark bait. Nano heats up milk in a pan using a stove as she continues, expressing her role as Hakuse's servant. She, as well, lives primarily at the house, only going out every so often for groceries and such. which sets up her dreams of being a real girl and creating an obstacle that stands in the balance of that. She pours the milk into a mug with the exploding bird from the Simpleton segment plastered on it, and starts walking over to Hakase. Nano calls for Hakase before stubbing her toe on the doorway by mistake, which reveals a lot more absurdity that goes along with her design. Despite not having any special features, as she says, Nano can still feel pain. Despite being made for the premise of serving, Hakase still programmed pain capabilities into Nano so that if she stubbed her toe, it would hurt. She made Nano as close to a real girl as possible, but out of her own selfishness, still dangles her dream above her head with the key lodged in her back. How pathetic of her! How despisingly evil! The evil itself approaches, even mocking her by mimicking her cries of pain. Hakase, in order to stop the pain, as she's picked on her victims long enough, takes Nano's toe off. Nano reminds us that she has no special features, but indeed, her toe can be taken off. The same intersection is shown for a final time, now with Sasahara successfully riding his goat home and being led by his butler. Considering he was walking the same direction as Nano was earlier, they must live close, or in the same direction at least. An SUV also passes by, so like, whoa! Nano and Hakase sit at the table as Hakase literally gulps down the hot milk like it's nothing. Nano, in confidence, asks Hakase what the key on her back is for. Hakase, with milk still on her upper lip, asks if she's ever turned it. Nano tells her it turns sometimes, but overall she doesn't understand what Hakase is referring to. Hakase begins to turn it more and more before smoke emits from Nano's left big toe. Nano panics before the toe gets shot from her foot and flies around. It crashes into a wall. As we see what's left of the toe, it appears it's connected through a standard USB, meaning potentially it could act as an eject for a storage unit, or maybe a Wi-Fi router, or maybe Hakase just put a key on Nano's back that only shoots out her toe. Nano apologizes to the audience, as she's come to realize she's full of special features. Nano asks if that's all the key does. Excitedly, Hakase responds, "Yep." Nano asks again with a distressed voice, and Hakase responds, "Yep," once again. Hakase is really enjoying this, isn't she? I can't even begin to express how pissed off this makes me. Hakase is literally using her own creation as a means to punish and torture in her own excited way, and it makes me want to absolutely demolish everything she holds dear in her life. She literally created a key, a fucking key, that she slams onto Nano's back, making it overly apparent that she is indeed a robot, which is against everything she ever hoped and dreamed for, and all it does is make her toe fly off! I fucking hate you, Hakase! You are the bane of my existence, you 8-year-old bitch! If anybody here knows how to somehow push myself into the anime world, the world of Nichijou with a fucking sniper rifle that will allow me to gun down Hakase, I will pay copious amounts. Nano, even after all that, begs her to take it down, and she refuses. She ignores Nano's pleas, as her own personal enjoyment is prioritized more than Nano's livelihood, and it's sickening! It's not even the last time we'll be faced with the horrible sin of such an evil little fuck! They sit back down, and Hakase explains that it's cute, and she believes it makes Nano cute too, essentially gaslighting Nano into trying to keep it. Nano tries to drill it into Hakase's little itty-bitty head that she dreams of being normal. She wants to sit in a chair properly and turn over while she sleeps. Also, apparently she needs to sleep as a robot. Whatever, that's not the point. We see her in a flashback, lust for the opportunity to go to school and make friends like a normal girl, showing us directly every little thing this character is set up to be. She simply wishes she wasn't a robot, but yet she can only get so far without something like one of her special features getting in the way. She is literally yearning for Nichijou, just like what we explained before. I'm telling you, we're living in a fucking circle. Hakase then responds by crying like a little bitch. She doesn't like that Nano doesn't like being a robot. She made Nano. She should be grateful. Boo-hoo. Little baby, gonna cry, little baby, I'm so sorry. I was kidding. Like I say, it was a joke. You know I would never believe that. Nano, stand up for yourself, please. Holy shit. Nano tries to calm her down by claiming it was a lie, but Hakase doesn't want to calm down. Hakase's too busy being a bastard piece of shit. Hakase yells at Nano to win an Akutagawa Award for Literature and a means to change the subject. Now, the Akutagawa Award is a real thing, but its inclusion here means the world. She is asking Nano to win her Akutagawa Award, more than for Nano to win it herself. Her response to the oppression Nano is facing is more servitude. Nano exclaims that this is what every day is like, and it makes me sick to my stomach. I might puke here right now when it's Hakase's fault. Fuck you, Hakase! We fade into a long shot showing a tower in what appears to be a factory district of Tokisadame. It appears this is where the headphone-clad student from earlier landed, and he has no idea where he is. This feeling of lostness and isolation is a perfect send-off to the episode, as in and of itself it represents the lostness of the characters. He pulls out his iPod and plays the ending theme of the show, ZZZ. I absolutely adore this song. I'm not even joking or saying that to over-exaggerate. We've had our fun and games, but now I mean it. This song got me through freshman year of high school. It encompasses what I love about Nichijou so much and why I continue to praise it to this day. Every time I listen to it, it gives me that melancholy feeling I used to have when I would stay up late at night staring at the ceiling. The feeling of nervousness when I had crushes on girls too good for me. The days where I felt sad as can be, but there was just one thing keeping me happy. Whether it was a friend calling to check up on me, or a nice drive out on the town, or even just sitting down and watching Nichijou, this song fills my head with old emotions that I both cherish and regret. Those memories of being lost in the continuance of time, yet still floating down the rivers of emotions. When you feel like you know everything, when you really know nothing, and you come back from stupid mistakes and become a better person. It puts me back in that old perspective and allows me to understand how much I've improved. A video like the one that you're watching right now would have never been made even a year ago. To have the friends I have now, the experiences I've obtained, the opportunities yet to be ahead, and even when I almost threw it all away, this song was always there to remind me why it all matters. Why continuing to live and continuing to improve means something. It's for the happy experiences, the new exciting experiences. It's for enjoying the youth you still have no matter what your age is. And enjoying your life like it's never going to end. And it's all encapsulated unintentionally in this simple story of a girl with her first crush. That's what ZZZ is to me. Was it made intentionally this way? I'm not gonna go out and say that Sasaki Sayako had this idea directly in mind, thinking anyone would take this much away from her one song, but I hope this goes to show you how much all this stuff means to me. Now, I'm not gonna go out and say that Nichijou saved my life or something like that, but as jokey as this video has been up until now, it all comes from a place of passion. It comes from years of memories. It comes from years of happiness and sadness. When I was a freshman, I loved this song so damn much. I made English lyrics for it that I would have in an Apple Notes, and I would constantly check it in the middle of the night just to see if I could improve it or add on to it or make it flow better. I'd sing it in the shower, and if I didn't like something about it, I'd go back and change it, and for years I kept looking back on that. I never really told anyone about it. One time I think my brother heard me sing it, and I got really embarrassed. I just shut off. But I guess as a gift to my younger self for continuing to go on, I made a cover of it just recently, which you guys can hear in the credits of this video. When I say I love this song, I genuinely mean it. Like, when I say I love this whole show, I genuinely mean it. When I made this video, I genuinely, legitimately, completely enjoyed every minute that was put into it. Every minute of struggling to work with my editor, every minute of staying up 33 hours in a voice chat just to get done with this and the album that's on my channel. All of it was just so fun. And I see myself looking back on it years from now, as fondly as I remember it. Anyway, that's as serious as I'm getting. Embarrassing, yeah. But hey, look, I own it on CD. Whoa, yeah! After that amazing ending theme, we cut to what is essentially the substitute for a traditional preview. It's Nano's big toe still stuck in the wall, which is voiced by guest narrator Reiko Katsuda. Nano's toe reminisces on how, despite being the big toe of Nano's feet, she still doesn't consider herself to be very big. If anything, she's quite small for something labeled as the big toe. She tells the viewer that she wishes to be bigger as to fit the title of big toe, unless she's talking about her USB storage capacity, which is explained to be 1 GB. Either way, she wants to be bigger, which is completely disregarding the feelings of Nano's other toes. They tell us to look out for Nichijou episode 2 before we have a chance to fully sink our teeth into what's going on here. This big toe is telling us outright that we should watch episode 2 of Nichijou. A robotic big toe that is somehow sentient and omnipotent all at once. It knows it's in a show somehow. It knows how to communicate to our human world. But out of all it could possibly wish to say in its short time on screen, it decides to solely revolve its dialogue around its size. That just makes no sense whatsoever. Maybe it's aware of its omnipotence and uses this segment as a means to toy with us, knowing our brains aren't evolved enough to truly know the world around us. Can it really do that on only 1 GB of storage? Or is that just more lines presented to make us rationalize the irrational? Maybe that big toe knows more about us than we do ourselves. And if so, how is it even transmitting? Is this what's on the USB's hard drive? Some program created by Hakase in order to communicate with us? First the future, now omnipotence? Nano really is full of special features, alright? More on this at a later date. Nichijou, Nichijou, Nichijou. Hey everyone, it's finally done. the ability to create a whole album on my channel and this video and a YouTube Poop music video collab that they gave me. Mr. Mean Green and Hoyt and Grande gave me the ability to be a part of when I was pretty much no one. This video, you know, all of it's dedicated to you guys, you know, people who enjoyed our stuff, who continue to like our stuff, continue to watch and continue to interact with us. Those that it's dedicated to the Nichijou community, the community that we really made this for. They're just such. It's just such a welcoming community, and it's so nice to be and interact with a lot of the people on there. It's dedicated to my younger self for getting me into this stupid show to begin with. I want to say thank you to all my friends and all my family members that understood where I was coming from with it and helped me in order to get this out. We also wanted this video to go out to the people lost in the Kyoto fire, because that stuff is tears us apart, you know, to think that such amazing creators, that people who create lights in our life and keep us going and keep us wanting to be who we are and express ourselves could just be taken away like that. It's horrible. We really want to do a part 2 to this. We really want to continue it. We want to finish the whole series. We want to get it out there. I know I sound like a hot mess right now. I know I sound like a nervous wreck right now, but everything that went into this video is just so intense, and if you guys want us to continue this stuff, please let us know, you know? Until then, thank you all so much. Like, seriously, it means so much to me. Alright, I'm gonna go cry in a corner. This is April 3rd on its own. It was like the best and worst day of my life. It all means so much to me. This past couple weeks has just been such a life changer. Thank you all. Alright, I love you guys. Bye.
So new. Hey, all that matters is I hope to see you soon. 'Cause when I close my eyes, all that I see is you sparkling throughout my dreams. Can't get you off my mind, it seems. I fell in love with you. And I'm so happy, yes, I'm so happy. Until then, I wish you good night. Hopefully we'll meet again soon. I know that I'll see you in my dreams tonight. Hopefully we'll meet again soon. Pyong, 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 pyong. 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 Pyong, 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 pyong. Pyong, 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 pyong. Pyong, 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 pyong. Pyong, 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 pyong.